running one of the most impactful fitness brands in New York and 3 legal cannabis dispensaries as someone who once got locked up for selling weed. The man behind ConBody and ConBud, Coss Marte. And in this episode, we talk about how he did it, what he's building, and why he never let his past define him. Welcome to another episode of the Real Mentors podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Martin. Real, as always, stands for Real Examples Altering Lives. And boy, what a treat we've got for you today. I'm sitting across from Mr. Coss Marte of ConBody and ConBud. He's got an amazing story of transformation, redemption, and trying his best to change the laws, legalities, and the entire culture around recidivism, not only here in New York City, but across the state and across the country. Welcome to the show today, Coss.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you, Sean.
My pleasure, my brother. It's been a long time coming. I've been a fan since the Vice dropped probably 4 or 5 years ago. That was your first big, exposure.
Yeah, one of them. Before that, I did like a lot of BuzzFeed videos. I got 20 million views and all that crazy stuff. It's a lot of like snowball effect on the media side. Like I've got New York Times. I got the Ellen, all the crazy shit. Vice was one of the biggest things that it still replays. I was a teenage felon and I was episode 1, and they filmed that shit in Williamsburg in 2017. And in a warehouse, and I didn't know where that was gonna be, but they had me like film like 4 days.
Okay.
And then it was sold to Europe. So my sister's in London. She lives in London. She's been there for like 15, 20 years almost. And so we were watching it on FaceTime. And my sister was like, "You liar, daddy never helped you pick up crack off the floor." I was like, "Go ask that nigga. Don't call him right now. He got the broom." But yeah, now it's crazy, man.
Let's bring it there, man. How did you grow up? I know you're from LES. Yeah. You mentioned your sisters. What was your family structure like?
So 2 sisters, older sisters, 5-6 years older than me, and me and my brother, 4-year different. He was younger. I'm the middle child. It was different. My mom immigrated from the Dominican Republic when she was pregnant with me, and she left my 2 sisters behind. So it was, I didn't even know I had sisters till I was like 6 years old.
Wow.
They came and it was like, yo, we in a small tenement apartment, and it just got way smaller with more siblings. So a lot of friction. They were just straight Dominican Hicks from the farm, you know, and I'm like running in the streets already at 6, doing compras in the bodega, like running numbers for people, whatever, like seeing New York City as a kid, and it was a totally different grow up and structure. So when they came here, it was, it was different. But I was already in the streets.
Right, they brought that Dominican culture over. You got that New York City
I'm
culture.
already in this. So I was like, yo, you older than me, but you can't tell me what to do, So I was outside all the time,
Your mom came over when you were pregnant. Was your dad in the house growing up here in New York?
Yeah, he was back and forth in DR. He came here a while back before. Was working in bodegas in East New York and in the Heights. And I mean, he saw his people get deported and all the drug stuff in the 80s, and he was just working hard enough to like bring my mom over here, then my sisters over here, and that was it, but he never got locked up. He never got caught. He never, he's told me stories that in Brooklyn that he's, almost getting caught passing the burner to somebody and all this shit, and people doing bids for him, all this shit,
So that's why you had this open kind of dialogue. From the research I did, you and your pops had a pretty good relationship in terms of him knowing you were hustling, but not really beating you over the head, more like trying to keep you safe from yourself.
Yeah, my dad was like, understood the streets and was like, yo, be careful out there type of stuff. And then my mom was like, Catholic Church, trying to get Santarias to take the, I remember when
Did you have the bracelet?
Chains, everything, but so I remember like, we was, me and my cousins, cause I was like always high. We all smoking in the hallway and the rooftops and the fire escapes, all that shit. So and they're doing horas santas every week. And then I remember going to my cousin's house and we get trapped in there. And we're like, oh shit, we got to get out. But the chain on the door is locked, you know, and like, yo, hey, todo el mundo quédese aquí. Like, we're like over there, like 10 deep. And we're laughing, cracking, and then we can't turn on the TV, you know, because they praying all this shit, you know. So they used to line us up to try to get like the Holy Ghost in us and get the demons and the weed out of us and all this shit, man.
Yo, it's bugged out, right? The cultural difference. My wife's family's like that. They came in the 80s. Our family, the Dominican side, came in the 60s when Trujillo got assassinated. So we got like another generation on y'all. But it's crazy how like that culture comes over with you. We were just joking about having families on top of families just because the culture was like that. Like, you know, I have brothers and sisters from my father's, I don't know what you want to call it, missteps or whatever. You know, Papa was a Rolling Stone. How has that affected you in the way you approach your family? Because you're a father. I know you have an older son. And then you have younger kids as well, right?
Yeah, I got a 17-year-old. His graduation is in 2 weeks from high school. He's going to Rochester Institute
of Technology.
Wants to study aerospace mechanical engineering.
Okay.
So like he's on his own path, you know, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that I try to, you know, even though I'm not there every single day because he's in Pennsylvania right now, but he, you know, I'm so proud of him that he's like done the right thing, even though he's made mistakes and done stupid stuff, but also like communicates with me and talks to me and keeps it real. Like, you know, it tells me what's happening with girls and all this other stuff, you know. And he's shy and doesn't want to talk about it, but eventually will open up. And then, you know, there was one time like he was in junior high over here, and they had to write a report about something in your life or something like that. And he spoke about me being locked up and having a dad that's working on, you know, doing prison reform stuff. And he read this out loud in class. And he told me, yo, after class, like 3 kids came up to him and was like, yo, my dad was locked up too. And I never told anybody this, blah, blah, blah. So like touching that part, like where we're like really keeping it transparent, like, yo, we have gone through this. Right. You know, how do we speak about it? How do we keep it just real and be like, yo, it happened? Like, you know.
And it's crazy. I mean, we talked leading up to this. It was like when you're in your purpose, all of a sudden the right things start to fall into place. The right thing starts to happen. The right people appear in your life. So it's powerful that your son shares a story of honesty and authenticity, right? Which is the buzzword these days. And automatically it empowered 3 kids to now potentially go out and embrace the fact that, yo, maybe we're not proud of it, but this is part of our story too.
And I don't know what their story is gonna be. You know, I don't know.
That's
like,
on them.
I feel like my only job as a parent, and I got 2 beautiful girls, is like keep them alive and train them how to stay alive. You know, that's all I got to do. You know, and so all this shit that I got to give you a fucking retirement fund, a trust, and yeah, I'm gonna pay for your college. I told my son, yo, go apply for scholarships. He got most of his shit covered on scholarships. Now he only has to pay $75,000 for 4 years of college. You know, that's doable. All right, take out a loan.
Right.
Now you gotta like structure that. Like, let's put that together. How does that look? Let's put a budget together. That's how we gotta do it. Cause if we say, yo, I'm gonna give you a college fund, they're gonna take that, spend the money. We don't even know if they're gonna finish. You know, and it's like,
they got no skin in the game.
Yeah, I'm gonna train you how to live.
Where I live right now,
because that's how I had to do it. You know?
And where I live right now is like that. Like you got, I call what you just mentioned generational progress, right? You fucked up, you didn't have this information. Now it's your goal to teach your kids this information. You're even more generous with your knowledge, and you go out and teach as many inmates as possible or young people to try and stay away from that. But where I live in the suburbs is 95%, you know, Caucasian, let's just say. Don't look like us, don't think like us. Everything is handed to them. So we struggle with that because we still know where we're from. My wife is from the Heights, I'm from the hood in the Bronx. And we got a daughter who's 8 years old, and sometimes the little shit creeps out and we like, yo, we need to cut this. Like this, she ain't growing up like, you know,
they got
friends wearing makeup, 7 years old. She's gonna be 8 in a couple months, and we like, yo, listen, everybody's entitled to raise their kids however they want to, but in this house, these are the rules. So kudos to you because your family structure, you had mom and dad, you had access, but it wasn't the traditional American family structure. Is that something you set out to do? Do you surround yourself with people that have what you want in terms of a family structure? Or is it like the business thing? You figure it out as you go?
I think it's just more being like just righteous and always being righteous on whatever it is. If you want to raise your kid at whatever way you want, that's up to you. But like, we got to keep them alive. We got to train them how to stay alive.
On their own.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I got people that work with me that have family members that have kids that come here and work out with us in the gym, and we take care of each other's kids, like it takes a village, but like stuff like that is like, well, what I feel like is missing and it's not happening anymore. When I grew up, like I was saying, we were all 50 in an apartment deep in a building or whatever. Like we was in a block together and we were trusted,
right?
With that older person that was going to take us home across the street with us or hold our hands, making sure that we're going to eat something or whatever it is.
Right.
And there was no phone, there was no beeper, there was no, like we didn't have anything in our pockets, it was like, yo, come at this time. And and somebody screaming, yo, your mom wants you upstairs, yo. What we've created here, we've done that in a certain in a smaller scale,
So you hold on to a lot of the values that you learned growing up in a simpler time, let's just say.
Yeah.
You said it takes a village. You got 2 young girls. How old are they?
3 and 1.
Wow. So you're in the thick of it.
Oh yeah, she's teething, I'm sleeping, nothing but whatever.
Congratulations, first of all.
Yeah.
God always gives those men girls, because they are there to help us raise the bar, let's just say. You're in for it, bro.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about makeup. She's 3 years old. She brushed her whole face the other day. I'm like,
oh, shit.
Damn.
Yo, man, it's crazy.
It's crazy. Still in her mom's makeup at 3, It's
nobody has given me more patience than my daughter, because I'm very impatient. But, there's so many lessons to be learned there in terms of having children. You also mentioned, we sitting right here outside of your spot on Orchard and Delancey, in the heart of LES. Tell us a little bit about how you met your wife, because you mentioned you did meet her here.
Yeah, I knew her from the gym, so she was coming to class for a while.
Okay.
And she was like saying hi, bye. We never even spoke. And then I remember one day I was crossing right here, Delancey Street, on this corner, and she had her little dog. And I was like, oh, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh, how's it going? I just now moved around here. She moved on this block. And she was like, I'm looking for food recommendations. And I was like, I got you. I know every spot around here. So I texted her, and then she kept texting, and we never stopped texting, and then, we hooked up, and then it was over from there,
She has.
But 6 years ago, we met on this corner, just started texting. And I didn't know I was going to open up a store or have my gym here or anything like that. It just came into fruition, and it's wild to see that full circle, and then I'll have 2 kids and have 2 businesses. I was like, yo, for every business, I'm going to have a kid.
Well, the way you moving, bro, you going to have a lot of kids.
Nah, I don't, I'm trying to, there's a lot. It's a lot of work, to manage little ones.
You started with ConBody, which is now going to be celebrating 10 years, I believe.
Yep, December, yeah.
As an official brick and mortar, actual place of business. But prior to that, how'd you get started in the fitness space upon coming home?
I basically wrote out my fake business plan, and that fake business plan included everything I was going to do when I came home. So I was going to work out. There's the workout routine that I was going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I put the whole plan together, and I created a 90-day workout routine, and then change it up every so often. But long story short, I came back to this neighborhood. I got paroled back to my mom's house. And I started right in the park across the street from there. And I took a stick of pipe between fences, and I was doing pull-up bar training. And I was just doing pull-up bars and then going after people that were wearing yoga pants, females mostly, and then just telling him yo, I got this prison-style boot camp. I lost 70 pounds on it, blah, blah, blah. And just going after people. The first client that I had was my mom, basically, and she was charging me rent, for a couch, but whatever, And so I had her. I had a couple neighbors that were just working out, 3-4 people there, and it just started building. At one point, I remember at the pandemic, we were doing classes with over 100 people in the park. Yeah,
right outside.
Yeah,
social distancing.
3 hours a day, so we were doing morning, afternoon, and evening. 300.
Did that ever catch up with you? Did you have a license, or you was just guerrilla style? We're gonna do this right here.
Yeah, no, they locked the whole park on us, because we guerrilla shit every time. So
it's crazy how.
It's still locked, the park right now, for 2 years.
Up for everybody for the next 5 years. Yeah. It's crazy how when you're a hustler, the lines are blurred, right? What you think is okay is not legal and is not okay. Same shit. Yeah. Like I'm running a gun and I'm running around hustling, selling drugs. I'm late night strip clubs, selling knockoff clothes to the strippers, Juicy Couture outfits, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. And this is normal life. For you, it's hand to hands, hustling, running up and down to the spot. And even a horse and carriage story that I heard where y'all rented a horse and carriage
from Central Park. Yeah, we brought it to the McDonald's right here in this corner and
that's brought
it to the block and was like just hustling off a horse and carriage.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That was the craziest story that I heard. But where does this fucking mentality kind of take a shift? Now, you're hustling legally, technically, but you're still breaking rules, pushing boundaries when you're doing it in the park without a permit. Because we don't know no better.
No, I know better because I filed for permits, multiple permits. I paid for all the permits. I go through all the applications. Like I said, I want to be maybe a lawyer one day.
Okay.
Because I'll go through all the steps, but nobody was answering. There's the middle of the pandemic. Everybody, I don't know where
right.
I'm following up with Parks Department. I'm speaking to the staff. They telling me it's cool. Police Department, they were like, we're cool.
Okay.
Everybody was cool with it. But there was one neighbor that was saying like we making too much noise, and all that stuff. So he called about 100 times a day for noise complaints.
Equally as consistent, if not more.
Yeah, he went to the Manhattan Borough president, all this stuff. He made it a big deal. One person, everybody in the neighborhood was with it.
You know this person? He's still around, or they still around?
He lives down the block.
Do you still see them or no?
I haven't seen them in a while.
All right, when you see them, say thank you.
I always complain when I see him, just that's me,
right.
But it is what it is, like now we got this. We're
that's
here.
What I'm saying, right?
Like,
say thank you, let it go.
It is what it is.
How does that transition now from the parks, you get shut down and now you get a physical location, even though it's not this one? How does that come about? How do you get the money for that? Did you have it? Who backed you? How does that look for an entrepreneur who's now starting to play the game the way the game is supposed to be?
It's hard because from the start, let's say from the park, right? And then I had sneakers that I sold to get some cash, and then I saved about 25 grand. I had won a pitch competition, multiple pitch competitions, got like 10 grand. Now I'm at 35 grand. Now I went to this other pitch competition that was supposed to get me 100 grand, but they said you're formerly incarcerated, so we're going to start you off with 25 grand. And I won that. And then I won another $50,000 grant. And then I got 2 other investors that were mentors of mine. One of them that was a mentor of mine, she was like, yo, congratulations, I want to invest in you, And so I was like, hell yeah. So at the starting point, when I got that first Craigslist listing for $2,500 under a Buddhist temple, a basement that I converted into a prison-style boot camp, whatever that people took in, but it took me about 135 grand to start off with.
Wow, at the other location.
Yeah, that's the basement in the Buddhist temple. I was there for 3 years, and after those 3 years, and this is 1,000 square feet, then I went to a spot in Ludlow Street right here that was 1,400 square feet.
A little bigger.
A little bit bigger. Got more people in there. Got that rocking, and I had 5-year lease there. After that 5-year lease, I was already building downstairs, and they were renting this out month to month. And the landlord was like, yo, let me know if you want this. I was like, you know what? I think I could convert this.
You're talking about this location where we at now?
Yeah.
And so this shit is a process. It's not like, we know you for this, but I don't know how much of that backstory's out there.
It's a lot.
What would you say to somebody who's trying to do right, who doesn't have the business acumen but has the desire and the hustle, what were some of the most important things that kept you going right there?
Just keep it simple, serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Like, just breaking that down, like the wisdom to know the difference that I cannot control this shit. Like, this is the tools. Like I said, I'm doing this in a small, minute scale, like I got 70 employees between my 4 businesses, 70-something people running it. It's small, to tackle a couple million people that are working, that are being affected by the system, to readapt people back into society and give them a job and make that transition a little bit easier. Nobody's really doing that like that, on a for-profit scale.
Where'd you find that purpose? Let's shift gears and talk about your true mission and your purpose, which is to address the inequities when it comes to incarceration. Me, myself, having been up north for a couple years, it's wild how it's like 80-85% of the population is black and brown up there.
Oh, yeah. And in Rikers Island right now, it's 97%.
Right.
Black and Latino.
That's fucking wild.
So
yeah, because we can't make bail half the time.
Yeah.
More than half the time, unfortunately. But what are some of the things you're doing to address that? And how did you actually find that purpose? When was the moment that you were like, all right, this is what God put me on planet Earth to do, or this is what the universe put me through all this bullshit for? When did it click for you?
I think in the box, it really clicked for me to like really change my perspective in life and just keep a righteous path and do something. But the fact of like hiring people coming out of the prison system, that all came when I was like really planning and sitting down through the 5 Ventures entrepreneurial program, really putting a plan like, hey, how am I gonna do this? And then also like seeing my people come out, seeing myself come out and dealing with all the bullshit and struggles. And I'm like, yo, how do I make it out of prison in New York State with $40 in a bus ticket? And what's my next step? My next step is going to go to McDonald's and spend $20. And then I'm going to take the train back and forth to parole, whatever. That now I'm waking up with $15. What the fuck do I do with $15 in New York City? How do I go for my next meal? Where do I go for my next clothing? Where do I, then I got my boy hitting me up like, yo, come back. We here, we out here still.
Right.
So how do you make that transition? It's you got to want it. And I feel like a lot of people that come home have a hope of wanting that, but then they, it's easily falling by the tracks when you're just walking back to the same block and the same people around you.
Or a couple of failures or denials, and it's like, oh, fuck this, I'm not going to try anymore.
That effort.
So where do you get that fire to keep going?
I don't know, because I see it working. I see it working on a smaller scale, I guess. For me, it's a larger scale because I never imagined myself to be at this scale.
Right.
It was an idea of like, hey, I'm going to hire one person, now the next person. Now there's hundreds of people that I've hired, that coming out of the system, and creating an internship program for people coming out of the system. Right now on the fitness side, they do a 2-week in-person internship, and then they come out and do a 6-week internship, and they're getting paid every week, and then on the downstairs side, we do the same thing, and so how can we have people take advantage of and get a check to them as quickly as possible?
Right.
We're paying people weekly.
Right.
We don't pay
I do the same thing. And people like the accountants were like, well, this doesn't make sense. You should pay people every 2 weeks. It's like, nah, I used to work. I get what it is to try and stretch your paycheck 2 weeks. So I've always done that. It costs me a little more to run payroll every week, but I don't care. It's like, because somebody got a paycheck every week. I wish I had that. Or if you had one of those first and the 15th jobs, some people say first and 15th welfare, but there's also first and the 15th jobs that just pay you on those 2 dates.
Yeah.
So that's very honorable. What's the story that stands out the most in some of the people that you've helped in all these years of, not only employing, but just being so active in the whole process of advocacy?
There's just so many stories, so many people that I could think about. Like I'll say my oldest person here is Derek. He's been working with me for 9 years. Recovering addict, prison, jail, locked up 50 times, I think it is, or some shit. Wow. 37 times, because he makes people do 37 burpees for every year, for every time he got arrested.
I'm skipping that dude's class.
But he's somebody that I saw come home and trying to ask for opportunity and doing the right thing, and then took advantage of that. And now is extended and done his own thing, works with, you know, all the homeless shelters down here, runs with them at 5 in the morning, and is a case manager for people like that coming out of the system and homelessness and all this shit, you know. But like, to see him extend on that side and touch so many other people after he was touched here, you know, and not, he's not the only one. There's just so many other stories.
When you say, you know, when you say you're doing it on a small scale, I know that's humility on your part, but it's that ripple effect. Your son tells your story, 3 kids come forward. Now, whatever their story holds, it holds, but you talking about Derek was the name?
Yeah.
So Derek comes home, you give him opportunity after all these things, he transforms his life, and now he's going out and paying it forward and transforming. So it really isn't a small scale in the way I look at it.
No, it's a huge,
it's exponentially impacting lives. And over the course of your life, because you're still a young man, you're going to impact tens of thousands of lives, possibly hundreds or even millions, because of the indirect effect of people's lives. You might, you know, it's the whole Tupac shit, right?
No, but I get this. I've gotten 300 million views on Snapchat on our channel that we did. You know, 8 episodes, 1 season, you know, but like millions and billions or whatever views. But I've gotten people that send me messages from any like crazy places and just say, you changed my life, you know, you done this, all this stuff. And I'm like, so we don't know. It's not measurable for me, you know. But I think what I could really measure is this, you know.
Because there's a spreadsheet behind it. There's people, there's faces, but that's why when you say that, I'm like, nah, bro, it's not fucking small scale. It's global, and you have traction globally, and it doesn't necessarily take the face-to-face encounter. I think when people want to change, it just takes that one light bulb. For you, what was that moment? Was it when you're in handcuffs? Was it when they're processing you? What was the moment that it changed and was like, okay, I'm gonna live righteous? You said the box, but was it a phone call, a letter?
No, it was. It was. I was in solitary confinement. You know,
What were you in there for?
So I'm gonna tell you the whole story from the front to back. I get called down to the medical unit from our unit. I'm in Lakeview. You know, supposed to go early release through shock. Okay. You know. So this is my second time in Lakeview. Finished 1 bid, came home. The next bid, I'm in here. They call me down to the medical unit. I'm thinking I'm seeing a dentist because I've been locked up for 3 years. I'm trying to see a dentist. I've been on the waiting list. I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna get my shit clean before I go home, blah, blah, blah. Here's what's going on. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go brush my teeth real quick. I go to the office, you know. I get down there as a drug test. Boom. I was like, all right, cool. This dude puts me on the wall, starts searching me aggressively. And as he started going between my legs, I like twitched my body a little bit, and he punched me behind my head. And he said, today's not my day, don't fuck with me. And knocked me out. I got back up. I turned around on him. He pulled a pin. When they pressed that pin, about a half a dozen officers come through that door in 2.2 seconds, and they just knock you out. They cuffed me up, shackled me up, put me in the box. They beat me up again in the box while they're searching you, and they throw me in the cell. Now I'm in the cell thinking like, yo, I had 2 months to go home. 2 months, you know, I'm coming home, or I was supposed to go home on an early release through this program. Because of this, now the dude said I was attempting to assault an officer. I'm refusing drug test, tier 3, you know, biggest ticket, whatever. Now I'm facing my whole bid, 7 years. I'm like, fuck, or more. I'm fucking mad as fuck. I'm pacing back and forth in my cell. It's the middle of summer. About an hour comes by, officers come to my a door, and he passes me a paper and an envelope. And I take, and with a pen, and I take that, boom. And I start writing right away the whole story to my family. I'm like, yo, I need help. I need to get IG. I need to get a lawyer. I need to get, look into this shit. I need to get the fuck out of here. I'm innocent, you know.
Right.
I closed his letter. I realized I had no stamp to send out this letter with. So I'm fucked. in the cell, 24-hour lockdown.
And you got no commissary for 30 days.
Yeah, 30 days. I'm waiting.
No deodorant, no nothing.
Nothing.
That shit is the worst.
So my sister finds out I'm on the box after a week, and she writes me a letter. She tells me, says, read Psalm 91 from the Bible. And I'm like, what? Let me paint the picture of my sister. She's like Mother Teresa's child. She prays every single day. She goes to church every day. She's
your mom plus.
She's like when I said grew up Dominican hick, like still has rosary beads that she prays with every day, like that, you know? And so she tells me to read this, and I'm like, fuck that. She gave me this Bible early on in my bed. I used that to write the drug dealers' names, Colombian dudes, because I was gonna come home with the mentality of like, yo, I got a better connect now. I got the plug. Like that was my brain. Like I'm coming home back to that. And out of boredom, sitting in there a couple days, I open up the Bible. It says, he who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my shelter and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. As I was reading those words in Psalm 91, a stamp fell in between the Psalm pages. And I had a stamp now to send this message to my family, and that shit gave me chills and goosebumps, you know, and I felt that moment for me was like a turning point, you know. And I just, out of boredom, I read the Bible from front to back and really started just understanding what I really needed to do. You know, it's just like be right to others. I felt bad that I sold drugs and poisoned people for so long. And I wanted to get back to society in a more positive way. And I was already helping people in the yard work out. We had this fitness thing. And I thought about it. I was like, yo, I'm going to do a fitness program, you know? And I remember bugging out in the box, just like talking to the wall, thinking I'm talking to other people, and just like doing this workout routine that I'm gonna come up with, and then writing it down and all this shit, you know, and just having the time to put this stupid idea together. Not stupid, but like as a reality.
At the time, that thought is creeping, yo, this is ridiculous.
You know, because I came home, I came out of the box, and now I'm back in general population, and I'm in programs, right? And I'm in programs in ASAP. And they telling me, hey, well, you have to present in front of inmates in a room of 40 people. Like, yo, what's your plan when you come home or whatever? And I'm reading this because I wrote this in a box. And they're like, yo, that shit's never going to work, blah, blah, blah. And I said I was going to hire people coming out of the system, all this shit. And they started laughing at me, you know? And I was like, all right, well, you'll see.
Yeah, they can't understand it.
Yeah.
It's too far from that reality. But God planted that thought, that idea in your heart. God planted that fucking stamp in the Bible. That's wild, bro.
It's crazy.
That is crazy, but no mistake. Were you connected to faith or belief prior to that? Something outside of yourself? Because I mean, you grew up in our unique Dominican culture of Roman Catholicism with the Santeria.
So I mean, I grew up down here. We elementary schools, but I also went to a middle school that was Catholic.
Okay.
It was a Jesuit small school, 50 students, run by Jesuit priests that were like parents for those who didn't have parents.
Okay.
You know, Father Jack over here was like, you know, separating fights in the park, you know, and talking to drug dealers on the corner.
They were living it.
You know, but it was not, you know, people think about Catholic priests and they're like, oh,
with the smoke.
Yeah, but Jesuits are different.
Right. They got boots on the ground.
Yeah. And so our family members and everybody trusted us with them and taking out to do sports and all that shit. But the education that I learned from there was way more advanced than I learned in high school, you know, in middle school. Because every year they used to take us out of New York to Lake Placid, New York.
Okay.
Through a leadership training program for 7 weeks. Now we have to learn how to cook. Now we have to learn how to wash our clothes, iron, clean our floors and everything by hands. And they coming in inspecting one finger at a time. Like, yo, this shit is dusty. No, done.
Right.
And so like just training somebody how to, like I said, like training our kids how to live, laundry, clothes, cook, do everything.
Take care of yourself. You know? Basic old school shit.
Yeah, but that's not being trained to our kids that are growing up now, you know.
Everything's convenience now.
Uber Eats, you know, and all this shit.
Yo, it's crazy. I try to, I'm 46 now, and I try to embrace the fact that I'm never going to be the old parent, that's not music, y'all lazy. They just have a whole different culture where everything's available to them. Unfortunately, they're using it for the wrong shit.
Yeah.
You know, what's your Instagram feed look like is always my thing. It probably looks like shit because whatever entertains you to pass the time versus something that could educate you, a story that could hit you in a way that would change your life. But again, the sheep are being herded.
Yeah.
And I think it's on people, individuals. Like I say, I never try to discount the impact someone like yourself or what I'm attempting to do can make because there's a residual effect to it. I think people are designed to move more like you're talking about than they ought to be scrolling. So that's why we have this emptiness that we have in today's society versus, all right, if you were moving, you were doing something for yourself, there was a sense of accomplishment, and that's what builds that confidence. And the more I hear your story, the more I realize you had a foundation. You had parents. Your father was an entrepreneur of sorts.
Yeah.
Your mom, what did she do for a living?
My mom was also an entrepreneur and 3 jobs and all the stuff. So my mom was a teacher in the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So she taught me like mathematics before even going to elementary school.
That served you well.
So her thing was like, you never stop educating yourself. She got her master's degree for teaching over here, and she didn't know English for 40. She still has a choppy English, you know, but she did it at 65, you know, because she never stopped educating herself and trying to progress herself, you know. And now she's 71 years old and does 100 burpees, you know, but like, that's the I don't know, it's different, you know, people don't grow up like that. And that melting pot that I got even growing up down here is like the Chinese, the Italians, the Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, the blacks, and everything. You know, it was a whole different movement.
It's a whole different vibe. Even when you walk down now, you got, you know, you're looking down at that basement and you're like, what the fuck are they doing down there? It's like some noodle factory for the Chinese restaurants in Chinatown. Yeah. So you got this colorful neighborhood you're growing up in. You got the foundation. You're hustling. You get locked up at the age of 13 for the first time. And then you do your long bid at the age of 23, if I'm not mistaken. When you come home, you're how old?
27.
27. I'm just trying to give a chronological timeline. You start on the ConBody concept right away. You're celebrating now 10 years of having a brick and mortar style business. And then now you are a marijuana entrepreneur, which to date, I think that has been your biggest accomplishment in terms of business. That's just my personal opinion because of where I see the trajectory going. Tell us a little bit about how that door opened up for you, how you busted through that shit, and how you're also applying that same purpose-driven mission of employing people coming home in the marijuana space now, the legal dispensary space.
Yeah, no, so in 2017, I have a good old friend of mine that lived in Rhode Island, and I lived in Rhode Island for a year.
Where all the Dominicans who are not in the heights go.
No, there's a white dude. I got accepted to a boarding school that I got kicked out for selling weed and all this shit.
Okay.
You know, for a year because of
the
the Jesuits.
College age?
No, high school.
Okay.
So high school, I get taken to the school. I got caught with weed and messing around with girls and all the bullshit, you know, and so I'm the Dominican kid that's bringing, you know, ounces of weed every week on a Greyhound to school and selling it in school. That's what I was doing. Long story short, I got this friend we kept in touch for so many years. We went to school for that 1 year, but he's always followed up. Every time he comes to New York, we chill, whatever. He got one of the first cannabis licenses in Massachusetts. Now, this 2017, he's like, seeing stories of me and ConBody and all this other stuff and wants to like work with me. And like, he's like, hey, I don't know how to run a cannabis business. Do you want to get involved with this? And I'm like, F it. Yeah, let's do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but he's like, you want me to
figure it out?
Yeah, I'll figure it out. So he went and tried to submit me to work with him. And as formerly incarcerated person who's been convicted for cannabis, I was not allowed to work. And I was like, what the fuck? This shit doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So I remember speaking on panels about that with the canna groups over here in the city, that they were putting events together. And I spoke about that inequity. And I'm like, this shit doesn't make any sense. You know, how somebody that has been in the streets cannot work in this space. You know, we know how to bring that market. Long story short, MRTA passes. This is the law. that allows cannabis to be fully legal recreational in New York. This is 2021. They announced, this March 2021, they announced what they were going to roll out first and who was going to get the first stores in August of 2021. I applied. Basically, you needed a net profitable business for at least 2 years. I had ConBody that was operating for like 70 years at that time. And then I also had the conviction. And so I was like, yo, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity. Everybody's attacking me. I got people, investors calling me out of nowhere from Cali, like, yo, sharks, you know? And I was like, I'm going to just do it with my boy and figure it out, you know? And then I eventually partnered up with two of my cousins that were going to launch in the Bronx and doing something over there. And that's how we launched in the Bronx and those other locations, because I had ties there. And then we opened up over here, you know?
Nice.
And so we did it, four of us, you know, 3 main operators working on this, and we're rocking.
And you did it your own way. You didn't get bought out.
Nope.
Obviously, sharks, people with long pockets are going to see the value in having you as the face and the brand that you've built over these years.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, personal brand is a thing now, right? I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You were doing it long before that, unknowingly. And now you're getting offers to buy you out. Does it ever entertain you to take the money, to take, you know, that big check that they're offering and that partnership? Or
yeah, you know, if somebody offers you $100 million, like what do you do? You know, I think that's a different story. I think I'll bless everybody that's been working with me. I'll bless, you know, I'll figure it out. You know, I'll bless people around me. You know, that I feel like that's not you. A lot of people are like, oh, you'll be a sellout, all this shit. But like, what is, it's not about that. It's like, what does winning look like? You know, when is it enough? You know, I don't know, you know, or maybe I'm like, hey, we hold up the market. We figured it out. We play chess, you know, we got outboxed them. But most of the time, big banks eat little bank, you know, and that's a reality. And the only way you could do it is if you really regulate, you know.
Right. Well, every company, you know, Google will buy out YouTube, and, you know, Facebook will buy out Instagram. And like you said, big banks buy out the little banks and they consolidate. So is there an exit strategy at this point for you, or what are you working toward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working towards boxing them out, you know, as much as I can, you know, but I don't want to be in a position where I'm bleeding cash and they buying me pennies on the dollars.
Right.
It's a tricky, it's how do you evaluate that market, you know, and see it coming.
You talked about having a competitive advantage. They have the competitive advantage because of the manufacturing side of things, where they can produce and sell, which knocks down their cost significantly, whereas your license only allows you to resell another vendor's, or I guess another product line through your storefronts.
Yeah, and what really protects the market is the proximity protection. So you can't be 1,000 feet from the next one. You can't be 500 feet from the school, 250 from a church, you know. And so in the island of Manhattan, technically right now, we have 90 proximity protected. On Whitney Economic Report, this cannabis report that they do on the state side, they only project a 77, but there's not 77 open in the island of Manhattan. Once we get to 1,700 dispensaries in the whole state, that's when we really evaluate the market. But we're not even there yet.
How many dispensaries in Manhattan right now? More or less?
Probably 30.
I won't hold you to
you know, 50. I don't know. I got to check.
Okay.
50 maybe.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you told me you are the only person with a record to have done 3 dispensaries
in a matter of 15 months.
Wow.
You know, so I opened up ConBud October 19th, 2023. Then we did the 2024 420. We launched it on 420, the other one, in 6 months. And then we did the next one 4 months ago. So 2025, we got 3.
Okay.
Quick.
And you have any more in the plans right now?
I want to get one more. You know, I have a friend that deserves to open up, and it's very hard because you have proximity protection, you have all these landlords that don't want to rent to us, or if they want to rent to us, they want to jerk
Premium,
us.
yeah, because they know what's going on and they know the money is going to generate.
This retail space downstairs, they were paying 25 grand a month.
Right.
I'm paying 40 grand because it's cannabis.
Of course.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what, 60% markup, more or less, just because of that. And yet, and still, when we talked about that off camera, you were like, I got lucky.
Yeah.
So you have an abundance mindset. You familiar with scarcity mindset, abundance mindset?
Nah.
Well, I mean, not you having it, but how about the term?
I heard about it.
Okay, so a scarcity mindset is the person who comes home from prison and they're worried about how they're going to get this, how they're going to get that. The abundance mindset is, I'm just going to keep grinding. I'm going to keep putting in the work, and it's going to show up. When you say, I got lucky, even though you're paying a premium to be downstairs, I think it shows an abundance mindset. Yeah, I'm paying 15 grand more, but you know what? I got my spot upstairs. My whole brand is here on this high traffic corner. You true to who you are, to your mission, and you still haven't sold out, even though that whole sellout term is usually from people that aren't doing too much anyway. So their opinion doesn't matter in the end. So, you know, you kept it in the neighborhood. You kept the business here. You kept the opportunity here for people, not only from the neighborhood, because I met some of your people you grew up with working downstairs, and then people, you know, two of the people I met today have only been home since October. One's fighting the case. So you staying true to your word. Your integrity is very high on your value list. So I appreciate that. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to appreciate that. Have you lost a lot of friends or lost a lot of people?
No, I think there's haters are my motivators. You know, I get maybe like 1%, maybe less than 1% of people like attacking me and calling me this bullshit or whatever, or like, hey, whatever it is, you know. For me, I don't know, it doesn't really affect me too much. I put my head down and work, and whoever doesn't like it, doesn't like it. And I feel like there's where I originally built like the ConBody brand to be, you know, because when I came home, I didn't call it ConBody. We called it Coss Athletics Prison Style Bootcamp, because I had a friend that was like, nah, that ConBody and, you know, all this convict stuff is too much. You know, it's going to scare people. And people were coming in thinking they were going to come to a regular boot camp class. And I'm like, no, this is real. And people would walk out. They were like, we don't want to associate ourselves with people like you. You know, like shit like that. So I'm like, you know, that's what made me say, fuck it. I'm going to be who I am. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, you know. But I think the majority of people, I've been blessed to have 99% behind my back, and that 1% is not gonna hurt me.
I think that speaks to you being real. I think when you were renaming it before you named it ConBody, that's when you were selling out. You were like, well, I can't really tell my whole truth because people are going to look at a certain way. But then they come in and be presented with this thing they weren't told about and didn't want to be part of it. So it's better to just be you. Let them know what they're getting into, and the people that are going to be attracted to it are going to be attracted to it, and the haters are going to be haters, bro. So some parting words of wisdom. The goal of the show is to tell your story, but more importantly, the lessons that you learn, in the hopes that some of the younger generation of our Black and brown brothers and sisters don't go down the same path. You had a lot of opportunities. You had a good foundation, but you went your own way, and I personally believe that was part of your story. Without that, you don't sit where you are right now doing the great things you're doing, and you're not on the way to even, I know and I feel, and I'm sure you do, greater things and impacting even more lives. So if you could give our camera some parting words of wisdom for the next generation, some of the things you learned along the way, and, you know, things they can do and things they can avoid.
I mean, I think ABC is something that I always push out, you know, always be closing. You know, if you feel like you have some energy to do something or business, or you want to get somewhere, like, yo, get something out of it. You know, and it doesn't have to be a yes every single time. Most of the time is no. You know, how many people I stop every single day and say, yo, you want this? You want push-ups and pot? Push-ups and pot? No, 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 no. And then I might get, oh, for real? You know, then I get that one yes. And then, you know, how do I close that deal? Always be closing, ABC. You know, right now I feel like we got so many opportunities to learn, and as things are unstoppable, I think the thing that holds us back is, you know, actually doing the work. And so if you really want to do it, like, show up, be about it, deal with the blood, sweat, and tears situation, because that's part of the process, you know, and just trust the process, you know.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you taking out the time, sharing your story. I hope we brought something new to the conversation because I know you're a very popular guest on a lot of shows and they hit a lot of the same topics, which I look to dive a little deeper and just get to know you more, especially in the entrepreneurial space, because I think by empowering our people to make money in the game that's been designed to keep us from making money is our best way to empower and change the system through advocacy. And unfortunately, it takes checks, like we talked about, in order to make that change. So I appreciate you, brother. I honor you for what you're doing. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Real Mentors podcast. We're going to have Coss's information in the bio. ConBody, ConBud, 3 locations right here in Lower East Side, 2 in the Bronx, 1 by Yankee Stadium. So when you're up there, uptown, make sure you're looking them up and going to support. Thank you again for coming out. And as always, let's get it.